Hello, coaches. Welcome back to another episode of Coach Better Spotlight. In this conversation, I'm chatting with Chris Lehmann, founding principal and CEO of Science Leadership Academy in Philadelphia. Perhaps the most inspiring conversation I've had at 7 a.m., this spotlight highlights the critical importance of living the mission of a school. Chris shares many ways that all community stakeholders are part of bringing the mission of SLA to life in everything that they do. From his first years as a teacher to his extensive experience as a school leader, Chris deeply understands what makes a school community, and it's not just a place. For all coaches seeking to build a lasting culture, I'm sure you'll find this episode an inspiration. If you enjoy any part of this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more conversations like this, please subscribe to our channel and click the notifications bell to find out every time we release a new episode. Remember, you can also listen to the full Coach Better episode wherever you get your podcasts. We are passionate about the impact coaching can have on student learning, school culture, and teacher professional growth, and we want to help you coach better. We've got some great opportunities for more learning after today's conversation, so stick around all the way to the end. Welcome back to another episode of Coach Better. Today, I am delighted to be here with Chris Lehmann, founding principal and CEO of Science Leadership Academy in Philadelphia. Chris, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Chris, tell us a little bit about your education background so we can get some frame on where you're coming from in education.
Sure. I was a teacher in the classroom in New York City for 9 years at a wonderful public progressive school called the Beacon School. And I started there when the first class there were seniors. So I was really sort of part of one of the early cohorts of teachers in that school and, was able to sort of work with this amazing group of educators and the founding principals, the founding directors of the school, and really think a lot about what progressive education means and what school startup was about. And it set me up really, really well to sort of dream big. And then a long time ago now, like back in, winter 2000, and it was either late 2004 or early 2005, actually I don't remember anymore. The school district of Philadelphia, and I'm a Philadelphian by sort of heart, and it sort of grew up outside of Philly, and posted a press release that said Philadelphia opened up 27 new small schools. And so I wrote up a sort of prospectus of what I thought a school could be. I called it the Philadelphia Academy of Teaching and Learning, which would have had the wonderful acronym of PADDLE. And I started shopping it to anybody I knew in Philadelphia. And, my whole goal back then was that I never ended a meeting without knowing what my next meeting was. And sort of spent the entire winter of 04, 05 just trying to meet with people and talk about these ideas and find my way in to get one of these small schools. And they never quite got to 27. They got to 4. But finally, it got to the point where I got one of them and, got in front of people and pitched this idea of what I thought a school could be. I had an incredible partner in the Franklin Institute for many years. And, and that was, they hired me in a planning year in 2005. And now one school has turned into 3 schools, and being a principal, I'm still the day-to-day principal of SLA Center City, which is the first school, but I'm also the head of this network of 3 progressive, inquiry-driven, project-based, caring model education schools here in Philadelphia.
I feel like every school I've ever worked for, and they're all great places, I'm not critiquing them, but they have tried so hard to be everything to everyone. They aren't able to just be that one thing. Was that because it was your vision and you were able to bring that forward? Like, how did you get everyone
on board with this one school in this one way. And because I think that you
can call it weird, by the way. It's okay. We do too.
No, I don't. I think it's amazing. I am almost unbelievable that a school is able to be so grounded in its own beliefs that you can let go of some of the other pieces. I think you've picked a really foundational belief that allows you to pull in so many other things, right?
Right.
But I mean, I see it every school I work with.
It's a good start, right?
Right?
Inquiry and hugs. It's not bad. Yes, actually. So all of that, is the answer. You actually named a lot of the answers. Is number one, make sure you have core foundational beliefs that can impact and inform everything you do, right? So it's funny because, we are obviously the Science Leadership Academy, and there's this, but the dirty secret of SLA is that, again, it's not just about science, right? So when, this goes back all the way to 2005, and when, the ridiculous story of how the sort of big moment where it seemed like this school was actually going to happen, which is one of the doors. So I was someone sends me to go meet with this woman, Deborah Weiner, who's this incredible, wonderful, she's still around, long retired, but sort of district lifer, right? Like one of these women in public ed who do everything in a district before they retire, right? And she actually, when I met her, she already was retired, but she was consulting for the district, working with some people there. And someone decides, so I go meet with her. Interestingly, in the district office buildings that became the first SLA building, and which is hysterical. And Deb, just has this wonderful sort of raspy Northeastern voice. And she says you sound like the people at the Franklin Institute, but we're doing something with them. I don't know what it is. And she picks up the phone and she says, I've got this kid here. He talks like you. Do you have 5 minutes for him? Right. And so she gets off the phone. She says, you're going to go over to the Franklin Institute. You're going to get some Carol Parson in. She's going to talk to you about this. So I go to the Franklin. I had this packet. I was shopping at the time, and it had the white paper that I'd written and some articles about what we were doing in New York City and my resume and yada. So I go up to the executive offices of the Franklin Institute, which are these incredibly intimidating places. And, pictures of old dead white people, everywhere, mostly men. And, go knock on this woman's door. This very, very, very elegant older woman comes to the door. And again, this is not the face that it was in 2005. There's a lot of miles on the face now. It's kind of this young guy. And she looks at me and she says, you have 5 minutes. And so I hand her the packet. She looks at it for a minute and says, continue, from her glasses. And she says, what is an English teacher doing wanting to start a science high school? And I said, well, and again, the clock is ticking in my head. So my New York City fast talking guy thing is on overdrive. So I was well, the Franklin Institute doesn't just want to start a science high school. And she says, excuse me? And this is the point. And I said to her, well, if you start a science high school, you'll get great science and math teachers, but everybody else is going to feel like a second-class citizen because their subject isn't really what the school's about. But if you start an inquiry-driven high school, where the ethos of what is going on is pulling out of this idea of the scientific method and asking powerful questions, but that cuts across all classes. That's how you'll get great, incredible English and history teachers. And, that's how you'll have a pedagogy that defines the whole school that is similar to the pedagogy of this museum, which is learned by doing. And of course, it's going to have an amazing science program. It's affiliated with the Franklin Institute. And she goes, keep talking. And that 5 minutes turned into 2.5 hours. And it's turned into 13, 14 years now. And it's turned into 3 schools. But to your point, so many schools, when they start up, they think that it's got to be content focused, or it's got to be sort of almost, I want to say, I don't mean to be this, and I don't know how to say this in a way that is less, it doesn't sound small or belittling, but it's the hook, but it's not an ethos, right? And there's a big difference there. For us, this notion of we should ask powerful questions, we should seek out the answers, we should make stuff, and then we should think about what we've done, and we should care for one another. Those are cross-cutting beliefs. And they are cross-cutting beliefs that are specific enough to lead you to a profound vision of education while broad enough to touch everything you do. And, and I think the other thing is if you look at some new school development, you look at how these schools develop is many, many schools that try to be all things to all people really end up in a place of mission drift and sort of start adding things onto that mission and that beautiful idea until what you end up with isn't very recognizable. And, coming out of the progressive schools movement in New York City and being a sort of someone who loves the history of education reform in America, there's a lot of examples of that if you read, and if you study. And so these were the things that we said we would never be, that would never be us, right? We will be true to who we are. And everybody believes that, which is kind of amazing. We have a gentleman who is on a long-term sub-assignment for us this year while Larissa is taking a sabbatical year. She just had a baby and it's wonderful. And he just picked our name out of a hat, right? Like, he went down to the district headquarters and he got assigned to us. And everybody on staff was a little bit nervous because he doesn't know us from Adam, right? And within a week, he was like, oh, yeah, this, okay, yes, how can I help? Right? Because, it's some strong Kool-Aid, you know what I mean? And I think, but that comes from knowing who you are and knowing what you do and believing it and building it in everything you do. I mean, to the point where even in a moment of crisis that we're in right now, and this is a moment of crisis for us, the rallying cry really has been SLA is not a place, it's an idea. And we keep saying to each other and to the kids, we will be true to this idea and we will live this wherever we are. And if we are together, it is enough. And, that's a thing.
Absolutely.
That's a big thing.
I think that's what schools want to be. And the mission drift, that's the perfect way to describe what happens, right? We're trying to be all things to all people. So the new thing comes up and now we're going to kind of sway over in this direction. Oh, we don't like that anymore. So now we're going to kind of sway, even if we have these grand statements. So I think
right.
I'm going to ask one last question, maybe one more after that. But this one is the tricky one. You founded this school, so you got to do everything from the ground up. What if, like me, that is probably not going to happen, but I'm going to work for other schools? How do you bring this clarity of vision and this, obviously we each bring our own passions, but how do you help schools that are already perhaps drifting come back to that one focus?
Right. Well, and the cool thing is that's been the work that Diana Laufenberg has done through the nonprofit that she and I founded, Inquiry Schools, right? Is because we can't all start new schools. We got all these schools. We might as well actually, work with them. And, some is, how do you help people build a vision? How do you then build consensus around that vision? How do you make that vision inclusive, right? Where I think that, what do we see in schools all the time? And this is not unique to Philadelphia. This is national, which is, the new leader or the new superintendent or the new principal or the new whomever comes in and says, guess what? This year it's all about direct instruction. Everybody go, right? But there's no consensus built. There's no communication. There's no transparency around why or how or if it's even good. And it's just this sort of top-down mandate. And I think we've seen, whether it's in America, in our public schools, whether it's in independent schools, whether it's in some of our international, one of the most illuminating things to me was when I started, getting the opportunity to go to some of the international schools conferences and talk with people about what we do at SLA and run workshops there. And I thought I was going to come in and find all these people who are these wild, crazy, maverick, do whatever because no one tells us what to do and we can build the most brilliant and that. And I was shocked by how many folks were creating prisons of their own design. And I was like, you don't have a huge bureaucracy telling you what to do in it. So what do you want? And what do you want to be? And what's interesting is that I don't think many people have ever had the opportunity to really dive into that question. And never had anybody pushing to get beyond the platitudes of that, right? The like, we believe all children can learn. Well, fabulous. Me too. Learn what, right? Like, or we want kids to be lifelong learners. Okay, awesome sauce. Well, guess what? Less than 20% of Americans read a book last year. So clearly, school didn't do that. And so you don't ask the next question, which is, you want all kids to be lifelong learners? Tell me what that looks like from a procedural, from a structural, from a systemic perspective. What are you doing to create the conditions in every aspect of what you do? If that's your number one thing, where does that live in every decision you make? Where does that live in your schedule? Where does that live in your hiring practices? Where does that live in your curriculum design? Where does that live in your parent interactions? Where does that live anywhere? Like, show me every piece of that. Because I can spin out, just like right now, I'm like thinking that through in my head. Like, for example, great. So let's assume that you're working for a school and what's your number one goal? We want kids to be lifelong learners. Awesome. Talk to me what that means about parent relations. And like, it's the parents. Great. Well, let's have parents model that for kids. Let's run parent book clubs. Let's all agree that every teacher, like one thing that we're going to do is or whatever, we need, there's 10 months in school? We need 10 teachers, or pair up, make it 20 teachers to run a book club. Two of you pair up and run a book club every single month, right? So that way everybody takes a month and we all run a parent book club where we meet once a week at 5:00 and buy pizza for the parents and we talk about the book we're reading. So that way kids see their parents in school modeling lifelong learning, right? That's a way that parent relations can be informed by a goal of lifelong learning. And that's the first thing I thought of right now at the end of my X number of 18-hour days in a row. But it's that kind of work. What does lifelong learning mean to curriculum design? What does lifelong learning mean to the roster? What does lifelong learning mean to, and you have to hold that in every single thing you do. Whatever that thing you believe in is, everything must be serviced by it.
Did you enjoy today's episode? Then you will love the Coach Microcredential program. We know because our current participants are always sharing their feedback with us, and we ask them to share their experiences with you. Each week, we'll be sharing a new voice from inside the cohort of the coach so you can get a participant's perspective on what will make the program just right for you.
I'm currently at the midway point with the Coach Microcredential, and I absolutely love it. I think Kim and the creators are mind readers. Somehow they have managed to figure out exactly what I need and when I need it. They have managed to put articles in that are applicable to exactly what I'm dealing with at the time at school, or are providing me the motivation to continue to keep moving whenever I need that motivation. The guidance, not only through Kim, but working with the other members of the Microcredential and just kind of hearing their thoughts, it really lets me know that I'm not alone in what I'm doing, and the feelings that I have are not ridiculous or silly, or I shouldn't be feeling them because other people in my position are feeling those same things. So I highly recommend it.
This is just one of the voices from our current The Coach cohort. Here's what a few others have to say.
I'd really advise anyone interested in taking the coach to take the plunge and go for it.
So I'd highly recommend it. I would definitely suggest you try and join to really help you develop your professional coaching skills.
So do it.
So I say go for it. Definitely take the coach. I couldn't recommend it more.
But overall, this course is fantastic because it's made me feel awesome. It's made me feel excited for my future.
If I were to give any piece of advice or message to future cohort members, it is to take the course. If you are on the fence, please take it.
As you can see, this micro-credential is for all educators, not just coaches, because you develop the coaching skills you can use in all aspects of your practice. You don't have to be a coach to have a coaching conversation with a student, a fellow colleague, a school leader, or even a parent. When you're ready to learn more about the coach, click on the link below or reach out to us at Eduro Learning on any of our social media platforms. Registration for our next cohort opens soon.
Don't miss it. Expand your professional learning network, dive deep into 26 weeks of curated coaching content, and get your own private mentor for an entire academic year. We can't wait to work with you. Are you ready to take your coaching skills to the next level? Join the next cohort of The Coach and make it happen.